You know we're hosting a family gathering next week, right? What do you mean by... That means you need to clean this house spick and span. If I spot even a speck of dust, you're in trouble. Here we go again. It's like I'm just the hired help to my mother-in-law, Sally. From the moment I got hitched, it's been a relentless wave of her griping. And the worst part? Sally is sneakily brilliant at chipping away at my sanity, all under the radar of my husband and father-in-law. Before I knew it, I turned into something like her personal lackey. Despite the toll it was taking on me, both physically and emotionally, I stuck it out for the sake of my dear husband. But everyone has their breaking point. Should I walk out on my husband to escape her, or endure and carry on like this? Neither option sat well with me. I didn't want to lose what mattered most. So, I pulled together some backup from around me and started plotting a grand scheme to give Sally a taste of her own medicine. My name's Heather, and I'm 29 years old. Almost 2 years ago, I married my husband Ken, and since then, I've been living at his folks' place being a homemaker. I first met Ken 3 years back, and after a year of going steady, we tied the knot. At the start of our marriage, I had a job and we were living in an apartment about halfway between our workplaces. But not long after we said I do, I started clashing with my coworkers. There were a lot of older women at my job, most of them were older than me. It seemed like they held a grudge because I had walked down the aisle before they did. It wasn't long before they started making my life miserable, and I began to feel the strain, both mentally and physically. I hit my breaking point and spilled the beans to my husband. When I mentioned that I wanted to quit my job, he came up with a suggestion. So Heather, Mom's actually been asking if we'd consider moving in with her. What? Your folks' place? Yeah, it sounds like she's having some health issues lately, and Dad's not getting any younger. They'd feel more at ease with someone younger around. Oh, I see. That makes sense. Your family does live in an area with quite a few older people. Yeah, that's true. I've been pretty worried about them, to tell you the truth, he said with a troubled smile. He was probably concerned about his aging parents. I heard they had him pretty late in life, so they must be pushing 70 by now. His worries about them made sense. Plus, being an only child, he must have been their pride and joy. He's the kind of guy who regularly checks in with his mom just to see how she's doing. So they asked him if we'd consider living with them. If I were in his shoes, I'd probably want to move in with them too. So I was thinking, if you're cool with it, what if you quit your job and we move in with my parents? Wait, I can really quit my job? Absolutely. Honestly, we can live just fine on my income. And if we're at my folks' place, we won't have to worry about rent. We just chip in for living expenses. Are you sure? Are you really okay with me being the only one getting this much help? I can't stand seeing you suffer. If there's a way to make things easier for you, I want to take it. Oh, Ken. Yeah, thank you. And just like that, we made up our minds to move in with the in-laws. I decided that was the perfect time to quit my job. But back then, I had no clue. Just because the job stress is gone doesn't necessarily mean happiness is around the corner. Fast forward a month and we're having the movers cart all our stuff over to the in-laws. They welcomed us with open arms. Long time no see. Heather, we're very happy you're here. No kidding. When we heard you two were moving in, we were over the moon. They were all smiles as they ushered us into the house. As we ambled towards the living room, my mother-in-law, Sally, hollered from the kitchen. Heather, lend me a hand, will you? Absolutely, I'm on my way. Sorry, I can barely keep up with all this. No problem, I'm here to help. I sprang up and headed to the kitchen. While brewing some coffee, I got the rundown of where everything was. Just when I was about to ferry the mugs over, she held me back. Hold your horses. I gave her a puzzled look, not quite getting what was up. She grabbed the mug and started sipping the coffee right then and there. Sally? She took a sip, scrunched up her face, sighed, and pressed her lips together. This coffee is a disaster. Can't you even make a decent cup of coffee? Well, you're as plain as a post and you can't even brew coffee. You're a real letdown as a daughter-in-law. And I hear you quit your job? About my job, the office politics were getting to me. You threw in the towel over something so petty. I swear, you kids these days, you're just so fickle, aren't you? My workplace was pure torture. But Sally, who didn't have a clue, was laying into me based on her own assumptions. But what could I do? It was my first day there. I couldn't just snap back. All I could do was bite my lip and bear it. She heaved another sigh, tipped the contents of her coffee mug into the sink, and said, forget it. I'll redo it. You just grab those cakes over there. And just so we're clear, hands off. You're the dud daughter-in-law, remember? I did as I was told. From then on, Sally was all sweetness and light whenever Ken or my father-in-law were around. The sniping started from day one of our cohabitation. Since I was jobless, I was stuck at home during the day. Basically, I was under house arrest, only allowed out for groceries. Clean up properly! Look, there's hair all over! Who taught you to hang laundry like that? Do it right! Your food tastes like cardboard. I can't believe you're serving my son this slop. Day by day, her acid remarks were chipping away at me. One evening, I thought about bringing it up with my husband. Before turning in, I broached the subject. Ken, listen. When I said his name, he beamed at me. Heather, I can't thank you enough. You've been keeping my mom company during the day, right? What? My mom looked really happy today when you were in the bath. She said it's like having a daughter around. She said that? Yeah, totally. You know my dad is always out hitting the links, right? She was home alone all day, so having you here is a load off her mind. He gave my hand a gentle squeeze and smiled, saying, I mean it. Thank you. The moment I saw his face, I was at a loss for words. What should I do now? I had just about mustered the courage to talk to him about Sally when he caught me off guard with his words. The last thing I wanted was to stir the pot in my husband's family because of me. Given the situation, I felt I had no choice but to suck it up. When I met his gaze with a strained smile, he looked back at me, worry etched all over his face. Oh, my bad. You were about to say something earlier. What's up? I couldn't bring myself to spill the beans and ended up playing it off like it was no big deal. A year flew by since we moved in with my in-laws, and Sally's relentless torment didn't let up. My spirit was scraping bottom, but I held on for the sake of my dear husband. Recently, Sally's tongue leashings grew over the top and she began piling on absurd demands. I've got some friends coming over. Go fetch some cakes from the department store in 10 minutes. Get rid of the weeds in the garden while I'm out. Make sure you season the dinner like I do. I'll claim I cooked it. The list just went on and on. Each time I fell short of her escalating demands, I was met with a fresh barrage of abuse. I was teetering on the edge. One day, as I was tidying up the garden following her orders, Sally barked from the inside the house. Hey! I found her smirking as I approached. You know we're hosting a family gathering next week, right? What do you mean by... That means you need to clean this house spick and span. If I spot even a speck of dust, you're in trouble. Hold on, even a speck of dust? That's just not possible. Excuse me? How dare you answer back, you incompetent daughter-in-law? If you refuse, you'll be saying goodbye to Ken. It hit me then. I turned into nothing more than Sally's pawn. I was beat, physically and mentally, but I couldn't turn my back on this life, not when it meant leaving my beloved husband. But even I had my breaking point. Should I walk out on my husband to escape her, or endure and carry on like this? Neither option sat well with me. I didn't want to lose what mattered most. Once I was sure of my feelings, a wave of pent-up anger towards Sally surged within me. I didn't give a damn about the consequences anymore. I was done dancing to her tune. I locked eyes with Sally and made my stand. Fine, I'll get this house cleaned up. Oh, isn't that something? I wish you showed this much enthusiasm all the time. This time, I'll make sure not to let you down. Well, I'll be expecting good results, but don't forget, failure won't be forgiven. With that, she strutted out, leaving me behind. Recently, she's been all dolled up and stepping out quite often. She dumps all the chores on me and heads out. It used to irk me, but now I found it almost comforting. I decided to let Ken in on the truth, hoping to catch him on his lunch break. When I opened up about the abuse, he stammered back. Is that for real? As I nodded, he let me in on a bombshell. Actually, my dad spilled the beans yesterday. Apparently, my mom is having an affair. What? Your mom is cheating? Dad's been frequenting a detective agency instead of hitting the golf course. He's gathering proof of her affair. They're even mulling over a divorce. What? I can't believe it's come to this. I was at a loss about how to break this to you, but I guess it worked itself out. Mom mentioned she'd be late today, so let's sit down with Dad later. Just the three of us. Who would have thought Sally was messing around on the side? But this could be a game changer in my favor. The odds of my plan succeeding just shot up. I had a big-time plan cooking, and I absolutely needed the aid of my father-in-law Scott and my husband. As Ken and Scott walked through the door, I spilled all the beans about Sally's mean streak. Scott was fired up, hollering, "That's unforgivable!" But I cooled him down and explained my game plan. Scott, I want to give Sally a taste of her own medicine. You in? Absolutely, but what's the big idea? As I spilled my plan, Scott and Ken were all ears, trading looks to check each other's take. But they were quick to give the thumbs up, looking back at me. Heather, it's a tall order, but count us in. We're backing your plan all the way. Yeah, you can count me in too. Scott, Ken, you guys are the best. I immediately picked up my phone and hit up my dad back home. What's up? I rapidly filled my dad in on my plan. Dad, here's the plan. I need a hand. I see where you're going with this. No problem. I'll round up the troops. We have to handle some red tape first. Can we shoot for a week from now? Sure thing. Got it. I'll gear up my end till then. Thanks, Dad. With my dad on board, I dove into the prep work the very next day. Alongside Scott and Ken, being super careful not to tip off Sally, we got all our ducks in a row. Fast forward to a week later. On this fine Sunday, Scott and Ken were kicking back at home. Sally was grinning ear to ear, playing the doting mother-in-law perfectly. Heather, what's for lunch today? Since the guys are here, why don't we order some grub? I've got company dropping by soon. Company? Right on schedule, the doorbell chimed. I swung the door open, and there stood my dad. Heather, long time no see. Thanks for coming, Dad. I hate to put you through all this. What are you talking about? You're my kid. It's no sweat. Thanks. Can we get started? Sure thing, but first, get the stuff out. On it. I shot a look to my husband and Scott, and we began hauling our packed gear outside. Having separate rooms in my in-laws' house was a real stroke of luck. We managed to make the moving prep happen without Sally being any the wiser. Seeing us in action, Sally quickly piped up. Hold up! What the heck are you guys up to? Sorry, Sally, could you step outside? Safety first. What's this about safety? Give it to me straight. No need for a play-by-play. It'll be clear as day once you see from the outside. What on earth are you plotting? As we carted out the last piece of luggage, Sally busted out of the house. A wrecking crane had just rolled up, all set to get down to business. Yep, the favor I asked from my dad was to bulldoze my in-laws' house. We're a construction family, and my old man is still in the game. Wait, what's all this? As Sally let out her disbelief, the crane got down to business. Watching the scene, she went white as a sheet. Oh, our house! This is your doing, Heather! You think you can pull this off? As she raged at me, yanking at my collar, I just gave her a sweet smile. My doing? That's mean. Just a heads up, your hubby and your son are on board with this. Wait, what? There's no way! They're part of this? Believe it or not, Scott's even got divorce papers ready. Say what? Well, you've been playing the field, haven't you? Sweat was trickling down Sally's forehead as she stumbled backward, her mouth hanging open. The knockout punch came from Scott himself. You've been living high on the hog with my cash and supporting another guy. On top of that, you've been giving Heather hell. When will you hit rock bottom? That's not it, honey. I didn't mean... We've gathered all the evidence we need. Divorce is in the cards. I'll reclaim all the dough you've blown, including damages for me and Heather. If you won't agree to the divorce, I'm ready to take this to court. Brace yourself. No! Sally's piercing scream echoed against the rumble of the machinery. No one was there to comfort her. Eventually, my in-laws split up. The three of us relocated to a monthly rental that we had set up in advance. With nowhere to live and no money to her name, Sally apparently moved in with her brother and his wife. But she's never been on good terms with them, so they're treating her like a maid. While working a part-time gig to scrape by and paying us damages, she's at the mercy of her sister-in-law's bullying. Karma's a beast, isn't it? She could use a bit of self-reflection. Meanwhile, after moving out of the monthly rental, we settled into a different apartment. I found a part-time job at a local bakery, and I'm living the dream without any stress. Scott's planning to stick with us. If I hadn't come clean to my husband back then, if Scott hadn't stood by me, things might not have panned out so well. One thing I know for sure, I didn't make a wrong call. From here on out, I'm looking forward to peaceful days with Ken and Scott.
How long are you going to stay here? My mother-in-law said bluntly to me as I was doing housework. I was puzzled, not understanding the meaning of her words. But she continued without mercy. Didn't you hear? I asked, how long you're going to stay? Donna, what do you mean by how long am I going to stay? I'm just saying, you're in my way if you stay here any longer. Get the hell out of our house. My sister-in-law is giggling beside my mother-in-law. Seeing them, my anger finally exploded. Who in the world do you think you are? Who do you think built this house? Okay, if you insist, I have an idea. They must have thought I'd be depressed. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law have a look of triumph on their faces. I gave them the biggest smile I could muster. My name is Natalie, 30 years old. I work for a big insurance company. I got married 2 years ago. I live with my husband Kurt and my mother-in-law. When we first got married, my husband and I lived together in an apartment. But one day, after about a year of such a life, my father-in-law passed away. Inevitably, my mother-in-law was left alone in the family home. The day after my father-in-law's funeral, my mother-in-law came to our apartment and said to my husband, Kurt, I don't feel safe to live alone. Let's move in together.
Mom, what are you saying out of the blue?
It's not out of the blue. I've been thinking about it for a long time. If I'm alone, you're the only one I can count on.
Wait a minute. You have sis too, right?
She's already married and moved out. And they live too far away. I want to stay here.
But that doesn't mean...
He looked at me with a troubled expression. It was too sudden a turn of events for me to understand. The sis he refers to is my sister-in-law Gladys. Gladys was married before us, has no children, and now lives far away from us due to her husband's job. I have met her only once, but she's not my favorite type of person. My husband told me that my mother-in-law has always loved my sister-in-law very much, but he doesn't like her because he grew up feeling the difference in affection towards him and his sister. That is why he thought that his mom was more suitable to live with his sister. However, my mother-in-law said to my bewildered husband without mercy, "Kurt, why can't you be nice when your own mother is so lonely and in trouble? Are you still my son?"
You know, I'm just having a hard time with this out of the blue. I live with Natalie now, and the size of the condo.
Then let's build a house. You said before that you wanted to buy a house as soon as possible.
No, we did, but not so suddenly.
You said you went to see a model home not too long ago. That means you're starting to think about a home.
That's...
My mother-in-law, perhaps fed up with my husband's faltering attitude, turned her attention to me. My mother-in-law looked at me with a glare and said in a surprisingly innocent manner, "Hey, don't you think so too, Natalie? It's not normal to leave an elderly person like me alone, is it?" "What? Well, I'm sure I'd be worried if something happened to you." "Right? I know. Oh God, I knew Natalie would understand." No, it's just that I can sympathize a little." "I'm glad you have a kind wife like Natalie, Kurt. Well, let's get started on the house. I will leave it to you, okay?" My mother-in-law left with these words, humming a song with her light steps. In the room where my mother-in-law had disappeared, all that remained was a loud sigh from my husband and I.
That's not good. What should we do?
Even though my husband would start to put his hands over his head, I can't help but understand what my mother-in-law says. If something happens to my mother-in-law, we can't rush to her right away in our current situation, and my husband probably can't say no clearly because of this concern. I can understand why he might feel uncomfortable to ask his sister, who lives far away. I turned again to my husband, who was wondering what to do. "You know, Kurt, about what your mother said, maybe you should let her move in with us."
Are you serious? You said before you didn't really want to live together with her.
I was thinking that, but I don't want anything to happen to your mom if she gets separated from you.
But...
So I was thinking, what about a duplex?
A duplex?
My husband looked at me curiously, and I nodded my head. With two houses, our living spaces are separated, so we don't have to interfere with each other so much. On the other hand, since they're on the same site, if something happens, we can get to her as soon as possible. I thought this would be the best way to live with my mother-in-law without stress. My husband thought about it for a while, and then his expression softened as he said,
That might be a good idea indeed.
I guess he was worried about both my mother-in-law and me in his own way. If so, all I have to do is to accept my mother-in-law. It might require some patience, but if it would help my husband and my mother-in-law to have a stable life, then there's nothing better than that. A week later, my husband and I went to see her. After we were shown into the living room, my husband immediately started the conversation.
Mom, we were thinking, how about you and us live together in a duplex?
A duplex? You mean you guys will build it for us?
Well, we don't have much in savings. All I want you to do is pay for the demolition of your house. Then we will build a duplex here.
That's a good idea. That way I won't have to worry so much.
I'm sure we can handle anything that comes up. I guess that's fine then.
Yeah, I knew you and your wife would make a good choice. Thank you. My mother-in-law looked at us with a big smile. Of course, a duplex is more expensive and more difficult to maintain than a regular house, but it is for the family of a loved one. My husband works for a company, and to be frank, my salary is higher than his. Now, we will have to pay our mortgage, plus living expenses for my mother-in-law, so our expenses will increase. I'm going to keep my head down and put more effort into my work. That's what I thought. A year later, our dream house was completed in the place where my parents-in-law's house was demolished. It was a little different from the image I had in my mind at first, but the completion of our little castle gave us a lot of joy. On the day of the handover, my mother-in-law showed up and looked around the house and exclaimed with joy, "It's bigger than I thought it would be. It looks so comfortable to live in. I'm so happy to live in a place like this for the rest of my life." She looked at the house happily, and I couldn't help but smile. When I was asked to live together with my mother-in-law, I was not sure what to do, but seeing her happy like this now makes me glad that I made the decision. But at that time, I didn't realize it yet. Even though I have come to live with my mother-in-law, we do not see each other very often because we live in a duplex. However, only at mealtime, she would come to our space and eat my cooking. "Hey, Natalie, I think the seasoning is a little light today." "Is that so? I'm sorry." "You should at least season it a bit more. You've been married a while." "Of course, I'm sorry. I will be careful next time." "That's because you're working all the time. A woman should be a stay-at-home mom." My mother-in-law always complains like this, and it makes the atmosphere at the table worse. My husband gives her a warning each time, but it doesn't seem to have an effect on her mind. My mother-in-law does not understand the nature of my work very well, and she often disrespects me in this way. The only reason we are able to live in this house is because my husband and I are working. I feel uncomfortable to hear her talk like this, even though I'm converting all of her living expenses. I found myself becoming a little cold toward my mother-in-law. Then one day, when I came home from work, I heard some laughter coming from my mother-in-law's room. At first, I thought it was a friend of my mother-in-law's visiting, but the voice was too young for that. I suddenly realized that the voice sounded familiar. This voice, could it be Gladys? However, I have to prepare dinner first. As I was putting dinner on the table in time for my husband's return, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law showed up. "Natalie, the food is already cooked." "Gladys," my sister-in-law said to me firmly, "Hey, there's only enough dinner for 3. "I'm sorry. It's always been for Donna, Kurt, and me." "Huh, don't make excuses for me. I'm hungry too." "Okay, I will get you one right away." "That's enough. Just eat Natalie's portion." My sister-in-law took her seat with my mother-in-law and started to eat without saying their thanks. She only complained about the seasoning of my food as she moved her utensils around. Of course, I didn't feel good, but this was the second time I met Gladys. There was no way I could talk back to her. I endured this for a while, and then my husband came home. Seeing my sister-in-law eating mindlessly, my husband raised his voice. "Hey sis, that's Natalie's seat. Why are you sitting there eating?" "Hey Kurt, you're still the same old dude." "Answer my question. Where's your husband?" "I divorced him, so I'm moving in today." His mouth dropped open at such a sudden statement. As if to push him into a corner, his sister continued mercilessly. Since I came back from a divorce, it is natural for me to live with my parents, right?
Live with your parents? This is our house now.
This used to be our parents' house. My mom lives here too, so this is still my parents' house.
Don't talk to me like that. Say something, Mom.
My husband turns red and yells at her, but my mother-in-law just looks at him like he's an idiot. In the end, my sister-in-law did not listen to him and did not leave the house. 1 week later, on this day, I had a day off from work, so my husband and I decided to start doing housework in the morning. Since the arrival of my sister-in-law, I have not visited my mother-in-law's room even once. However, even if we don't show up, she always comes to our room when we eat. My husband and I have not been able to establish a relationship with them. What should we do from now on? While I was doing housework, the door leading the front door opened, and my mother-in-law appeared. "Hey, how long are you going to stay here?" she bluntly said to me as I was doing the housework. When I was at a loss for the meaning of her words, she continued without mercy. "Didn't you hear what I said? I asked you how long you're going to stay." "Donna, what do you mean, how long am I going to stay?" "Exactly what I said. I'm telling you, you can't stay here any longer. Get the hell out of our house." "Get out? What are you talking about?" "This was my father's land. If you put up a house here, it's practically my mother's house, so you get out." Then they giggled among themselves. Seeing them, my anger finally exploded. "Who in the world do you think you are? Who do you think built this house?" "Okay, I have my own ideas." My sister-in-law and mother-in-law had a look of triumph on their faces, as if they thought I would be depressed. I gave them a big smile. "What? Are you sure you want me to leave?" Perhaps it wasn't an unexpected answer, but the expression on the faces of my sister-in-law and mother-in-law hardened. Still, Donna tried her best to keep her composure and talked forcefully. "What are you talking about? Are we sure? You're the one who should be kicked out of the house." "Okay. I wonder what happens then." "Donna, do you understand? You know what will happen if we leave now?" "Don't get me wrong. You're the only one we asked to leave. Cart needs to stay here in our money." "What are you going to do, Cart?" Apparently, they were unaware of my husband's presence. They turned pale when he emerged from the shadows of the kitchen. "Hey, wait, Cart, you're here? If you're here, just say so." My sister-in-law yelled at him, and my husband gave her a cold stare.
"I was just hiding because I didn't want to talk to you. Just when I wondered what you were going to say. What the hell are you talking about? Telling Natalie to get out of here."
"We were only talking to Natalie. We weren't talking about you, did we?"
Okay. We'll leave as you wish. That should be fine, right?"
My sister-in-law bit her lip in the frustration. But finally she said, "Get out of here, both of you." She went back to her room with my mother-in-law. My husband and I immediately started moving. We temporarily rented an apartment within commuting distance of each other's office and moved in a few days later. At the same time, we decided to sell the duplex. We decided to have a real estate agent list the property with an appraisal when my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were out of town. The buyer was quickly found, partly because the house was newly built. So we went to visit them for the first time in a while. When my mother-in-law saw us, she said, "What do you want now?" faking a smile. She probably did not realize the situation they were in yet. Why my sister-in-law was so proud of her victory. I told her clearly, "I'm sorry, but you have to leave this house by the end of this month. What are you talking about out the blue? You're the one who left. The buyer's been found for this house. Huh? Buyer? So you can't live here anymore. Can you leave now? Seeing my serious face, she must have realized I wasn't joking. My mother-in-law immediately tried to turn the tables on me with a tight expression on her face. Natalie, what's wrong with you all of a sudden? If you wanted to stay here so badly, it's not too late. What are you talking about? Why would I want to live with you people? We were so worried about you that we decided to build a duplex. But you wanted the house so you could live with Gladys. Now that we know what you were up to, we've made up our minds. I won't let you do what you want anymore. Get the hell out of here. When I yelled at them, my sister-in-law and mother-in-law panicked. After that, though, they refused to leave the house. And finally, they were ordered to leave the house by the contractor. My husband and I had no choice but to go to the house and remove all their belongings. They had nowhere to go, and after staying at the hostel for a few days, they moved into the house of my mother-in-law's brother and his wife. Her brother seems to be a strict man, and after hearing what happened, he turned them away at the door. As a result, my sister-in-law started working at the nightclub, and my mother-in-law started working part-time. They are now blaming each other, and there are complaints about their yelling at night. On the other hand, my husband and I are happy to announce that we were expecting our first child. We are now looking for a new place to live for the sake of our newborn child. Even if it's a family member of someone you love, you don't have to sacrifice everything for them. On the other hand, even complete strangers can become lifelong friends by having a good relationship. I hope to build a better relationship with them.
Are you playing on the computer again? Even though you're relying on your husband's support, you're worthless. My mother-in-law doesn't understand that I work, no matter how much I try to explain it to her. And now she finally said this. My daughter is coming back for childbirth, so get out. This person doesn't seem to know who pays the $2,500 rent. I've had enough, so I decided to leave the house. The movers efficiently transported my belongings. Hey, what exactly are you doing? What's wrong with me selling my own things? My name is Katie. I'm a 34-year-old graphic designer. It has been 2 years since I married my husband, Cole. We were originally colleagues at the same company, and our relationship gradually grew closer after he approached me during a company drinking party.
I like you, Katie.
Huh?
So I want you to see me as someone who's into you romantically from now on.
If someone suddenly says something like that, even if I didn't like it, I would still become aware of it. After that, he started inviting me out on dates frequently. As he put in a lot of effort to pursue me, I gradually began to open my heart. And after going on several dates, we decided to start a relationship. He was incredibly kind and gentlemanly, and I found myself increasingly drawn to him. We continued to date smoothly, and after about 1.5 years of being together, he proposed to me.
To me, Kate, you are an irreplaceable presence. Please, marry me.
Yes, I gladly accept. Thank you. And that's how we decided to get married. We immediately went to meet each other's parents. My parents liked his sincerity and quickly gave their approval for our marriage. Katie, you can be a bit strong-willed, so I'm relieved you found a good person. Hey, Mom, that's a bit harsh.
Well, Katie, you're the strongest one in this household, you know?
Dad, please stop teasing me. It was great that the marriage introductions went smoothly in such a friendly atmosphere. Afterward, he and I went to visit his parents' house as well. Thank you for coming. Please come in.
Make yourself comfortable and come on in.
His parents welcomed me with smiles. I'm surprised to see such a cute bride coming for Cole. Oh no, I'm not that cute really.
Well, it's a workplace romance, huh? Who made the first move? Of course, it was me. Oh. Hey, what's with that?
He blushed with embarrassment as his parents teased him. The marriage introduction with his parents went smoothly and in a friendly atmosphere. His parents seemed kind, and it seemed like we could have a happy married life. After that, we also had a meeting with both families. That was when I met his younger sister for the first time. His sister seemed a bit lively, or rather, youthful. But in terms of age, she was actually 3 years younger than me, so at that time she was already 29 years old. I was surprised when I heard that you were getting married, Cole. But I'm getting married soon too, so it's a joyous occasion, right? Oh, really?
Oh yes, our daughter actually has her wedding planned for this year too.
That's truly wonderful. I feel so full of happiness already. Hearing that Cole's sister was also getting married made us incredibly happy. Afterward, Cole and I had our wedding ceremony. Our colleagues at work didn't know that we were dating, so they were all quite surprised, but they congratulated us. Many of our friends and relatives attended, making it a lovely wedding ceremony. Afterward, we went on our honeymoon and started living together upon our return. Our newlywed life was incredibly enjoyable, and every day felt like a blessing. I decided to resign from my job after getting married. However, it didn't mean I became a full-time housewife. In fact, I had been working as a graphic designer. I decided to go freelance when we got married. That way I could earn an income while taking care of household matters. I have been preparing for this kind of work from home setup for a while. Therefore, as soon as I became a freelancer, I secured contracts and had a stable income from the start. Of course, I managed my schedule efficiently and took care of household chores like cleaning, laundry, and cooking for the sake of my husband.
This creamy pasta is really delicious.
I'm so glad you like it.
Make it again, okay?
Sure, of course. I'll make it. My husband always compliments and enjoys the meals I cook. That's why I feel a great sense of accomplishment, and since I work from home, I can make dishes that require more preparation time. Cooking had become one of my hobbies. We were happily enjoying our newlywed life in such a delightful manner. Time flew by quickly, and 2 years had passed in our married life. My career was progressing well, and my income was increasing. We had a good relationship with each other, and we continued to have a joyful married life. However, amidst this, a sad event occurred.
Huh? Dad?
A phone call came to my husband, and it was from his mom. Shockingly, she informed us that his dad had suddenly fallen seriously ill. My husband and I rushed to the hospital. My father-in-law had to stay in the hospital for a while, and since then we frequently visited him. However, his condition worsened, and sadly he passed away. Cole's mom broke down in tears by her husband's side. Why, Dad? My sister-in-law was crying in the hospital room with my mother-in-law. My husband was also deeply saddened, but he must have felt that he needed to stay strong. He asked for my assistance, and we started arranging and preparing for the funeral. I made up my mind to help my husband with all my strengths and provided various forms of support. Thanks to that, we were able to swiftly proceed with the funeral preparations. Many people attended my father-in-law's funeral. Considering how kind-hearted my father-in-law was, it made sense that he was well-liked. I also received a lot of support from my in-laws when I visited their home, so I can understand why my father-in-law was so beloved. We bid a proper farewell to my father-in-law, knowing well how much he was respected. After successfully completing the funeral, my husband and I returned to our daily lives. Then, after a little while, we started receiving frequent communication from my mother-in-law. It seemed like she was reaching out to us quite often. Are both of you doing well? When will you come home for a visit? The other day, our neighbor gave me some delicious sweets. If you like, why don't you come and have some? Most of the contacts from my mother-in-law were invitations for us to visit my husband's hometown. Both my husband and I thought that she must be feeling very lonely. Since my father-in-law passed away, she's living alone without us or my sister-in-law. It must be lonely for her. My sister-in-law lives a bit far from home due to her husband's job relocation. It takes a 23-hour drive to get there, so it's not easy for her to visit frequently. On the other hand, it's only about a 30-minute drive from our house to my in-laws' place. That's why my mother-in-law probably wants us to come and visit her. Therefore, we made an effort to go to my in-laws' place on our days off, whenever possible. Each time, my mother-in-law seemed delighted and we felt relieved. However, my mother-in-law started contacting us repeatedly, expressing her desire for us to visit. Observing her behavior, one day my husband made a suggestion to me.
How about living together with Mom?
Huh? Living together?
Yeah, I mean, Mom must feel lonely on her own, and it's also a concern if something happens while she's alone. If we live together, we won't have to go back and forth all the time to check on her, right?
I see. I thought that could be an option. Certainly, it's a bit inconvenient to go through the trouble of preparing and visiting my in-laws' place on our days off, but I wonder if living together will work out. My mother-in-law is a kind person, but there's no guarantee that there won't be any issues between daughter-in-law and mother-in-law.
I was really troubled. If living at my parents' house doesn't work out, we could rent a new place and set up a working room for you. Our family home is old and there aren't many rooms. How about renting an apartment where you, Katie, can work comfortably?
My husband made such a suggestion. I thought it was a good idea. Indeed, living together at my in-laws' place would be a bit inconvenient, and I had that feeling. If we move to a place with more rooms, everyone's privacy can be preserved. I was convinced by my husband and decided to live with my mother-in-law. When my husband proposed it to my mother-in-law, she immediately agreed. And my mother-in-law sold the family home and moved with us to a new residence.
Wow, it's such a spacious and beautiful place. I never thought we could live in a place like this.
The apartment we moved into has a slightly higher rent of $2,500, but everyone gets their own room and there's a separate bedroom for us as a couple. It's quite spacious now and the kitchen is all modern, so cooking is easy. We were able to live a very comfortable life. Above all, it's a newly built rental apartment, so everything from the interior to the exterior is beautiful. My mother-in-law seemed happy to be living with us. I thought it was a good decision to live together and move here, but around 6 months later, I believe, was when my mother-in-law's attitude started to change. Katie, don't you have anything else to do than always locking yourself in the room during the day and playing? Huh? I was surprised when my mother-in-law said that. I work from home and I'm currently working. I can tell you're lying. I had previously mentioned to my mother-in-law that I work from home, and my husband should have explained it to her as well. I was confused because she said something like that. As a daughter-in-law, your job is to take care of the household meticulously and support your husband. Just because you're good at cooking, don't think you can get away with it. The fact that you're slacking off will eventually be exposed. It's not true. I'm not slacking off. I'm working while doing household chores. A normal job is something you go to the office for. Don't make up excuses. I was perplexed by my mother-in-law's change in attitude, and since then her treatment towards me has become increasingly harsh. Hey, the supplies are running out. Oh, sorry. I'm planning to go shopping in the afternoon, so can it wait until then? I want to drink the things I want to drink now. Not being able to drink what I want when I want is the worst. I want you to be more responsible. I feel sorry for Cole for having such a terrible wife. My mother-in-law would verbally abuse me like this every day. I couldn't bear it, and talked to my husband about it, but he didn't listen.
Mom bullying you? No way, she wouldn't do such a thing. Besides, she talks to you kindly with a smile during meals, right?
That's because you're there. It's much worse when we're alone during the day.
Mom wouldn't do something so mean.
It seemed like my husband blindly trusted his mother, and he couldn't believe what I was saying. In situations like this, I think a husband should believe his wife. I felt a little disappointed in my husband. and the bullying from my mother-in-law continued. Lately, she has been constantly pressuring us about when we will have children. Are you infertile? You have absolutely no redeeming qualities. Her heartless words kept piling up stress on me. Are you playing on the computer again? You're just wasting your husband's money. No matter how much I explained, my mother-in-law refused to understand that I was working. And she finally said something like this. Recently, we're temporarily living here. Huh? What do you mean? Just got pregnant. Huh? What do you mean? Unlike you, she's a good girl, and she's going to give me a grandbaby. So you'll have to leave. Huh? Of course, having a stranger like you around is nothing but stress for that child. Wait a minute, are you going a bit too far with your words? You're so annoying. You're just a parasite in this house. It's better for my daughter's peace of mind during childbirth if someone like you who gets in the way is gone. Leave because my daughter will be coming back for her postpartum stay. My mother-in-law's words are unbearable. Does she not know who pays the monthly rent of $2,500? I decided I had reached my limit and made up my mind to leave the house. I understand. I'll leave. When I said that, my mother-in-law smiled as if it suited me. Fine, as long as you understand, you don't have to come back. Ignoring my mother-in-law's words, I began packing my belongings. That night, I talked to my husband, or rather, it was more like a final confirmation. Will he ultimately choose me over his mother? I explained to my husband that his mother told me to leave because his sister is coming back for her postpartum stay. In response, my husband laughed, saying his mother wouldn't use such harsh words like leave.
Don't twist the fact like that, he said with a smile. If that's what Mom said, I'm sorry, but why don't you temporarily go back to your parents' house or something?
At that moment, I realized that this person was hopeless. He's a mama's boy who values his mother more than his wife. All right, I understand. I said that and immediately made a phone call to a certain place. It was a house moving service. Luckily, they could come tomorrow, so I quickly made a reservation. And the next day, on Saturday afternoon, the service people arrived. Huh? What? Seeing several moving personnel entering the house, both my husband and mother-in-law were surprised. I instructed them to take all the furniture and appliances. The moving people efficiently moved the belongings out of the house. Wait, what are you doing? Why are you moving the TV and refrigerator? My mother-in-law shouted like that. I coldly looked at her and said, What's wrong with me selling my own things? Huh? All the things in this house were bought by me. That's a lie. If you think it's a lie, why don't you ask Cole? My mother-in-law looked surprised and turned to my husband. My husband answered,
Oh yes, it's true. Katie bought all the furniture and appliances in this house. But why do you need to sell them if you're temporarily leaving the house?
My husband asked me that. It's because I'm getting a divorce from you.
Huh? Divorce? Why all of a sudden?
My husband was taken aback by the mention of divorce. Because I've repeatedly told you about the harassment from your mother, but you never listened. I can't continue a married life with someone like that, so I'm leaving. I know your income is insufficient to pay the rent here, but do your best. My husband's face turned pale at my words. Huh? You mean the monthly rent for this house is $2,500? Of course. I was the one paying it. My mother-in-law turned pale when she learned the truth. I must have explained countless times that I work from home. I can't live with a mother who didn't believe me and showered me with hurtful words anymore. Wait! I'll apologize, so please forgive us. I won't kick you out of the house.
Yeah, I'm sorry too for not believing your words, Katie. Let's continue living here together as a family of 3.
Even if they said such things, it's already too late. It's unfortunate, but repairing something that's already broken isn't that easy. Besides, you're just apologizing because your own lives are in jeopardy. If you continue living together like this, you'll quickly return to being the abusive mother-in-law and the mama's boy you used to be. The moving personnel who were moving the furniture chuckled at my words. My mother-in-law and husband looked embarrassed as they lowered their heads. After seeing off the moving personnel who finished moving the items, I placed my belongings at the entrance. Well, here's the divorce papers. I handed the divorce papers to my husband and left the house. My mother-in-law and husband watched in astonishment as I walked out. After that, I went back to my parents' house temporarily. It seems my husband continued to refuse the divorce, but I hired a lawyer and submitted evidence of the abuse from my mother-in-law, including recorded conversations. In the end, my husband agreed to the divorce and we separated. And then his sister returned for a temporary stay to give birth. And by the time his sister came back to have a baby back home, they already had to cancel that room. Well, honestly, my husband's income was low, so it was impossible for him to continue living in that place under those circumstances. Moreover, he would need to buy new furniture and appliances, which would require additional money. In the end, it seems they moved to a cheap and small rental apartment. But my sister-in-law didn't come back just for a regular visit. She had gotten a divorce due to an affair and came back home. It is said that she was caught with a baby from the affair and was kicked out of the house by her husband. Even though she had hoped to return to her new and beautiful childhood home, it seems that her family's situation has taken a turn for the worse, and she is feeling desperate. It seems that she is in a difficult situation where she cannot receive child support. And on top of that, her husband is demanding alimony from her. As a result, everyone in my in-laws' family is working hard just to make ends meet. They deserve what they got. On the other hand, I am living comfortably at my parents' house after a long time and my work is going smoothly as ever. For now, I plan to focus on my work while taking a break from romance and marriage. I'm even considering the possibility of starting a new life abroad. Why do people bully their daughter-in-law? And the husband who blindly believes his mother is just despicable. It seems like it was a good thing for Katie to cut ties with such a family. She has enough independence and income to support herself. From now on, live freely for your own sake. I sincerely hope that she will have a happy life ahead. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to the channel. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.